Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. This episode is jam-packed with goodness. I really hope you cozy up, whether you're multitasking and like doing the dishes, preparing for dinner, driving to work, sitting in an infusion chair. I really hope that you, just find yourself enthralled in today's conversation. I definitely was throughout the entire interview, and I really hope you enjoy the dialogue I have with Dr. Sophia Edwards-Bennett. Dr. Edwards-Bennett is affectionately known to her patients as Dr. EB. She is a board-certified radiation oncologist who gained her medical and oncology postgraduate education from Harvard Center Therapeutics and Research Program, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and Cornell Medical College. With over 15 years of experience practicing oncology, she has led in the establishment of launching of radiation oncology centers nationally and internationally. Dr. EB is not only passionate about patients' care and clinical care, but she has excelled academically, authoring and co-authoring multiple peer-reviewed publications. She has presented at several conferences and has been donned with amazing awards and accolades, including the American Council of Best in Medicine. She has also received Lifetime Achievement Awards, Top Doctor Awards in multiple states, Patient Choice Awards, etc. She is a best-selling author and recently published her top new book release, which we are going to talk about a little bit today, called The Path to Soul Immunity, Soul Currency for Life, and the Big C with Dr. EB. Before we jump in, I just want to make sure that you, as our listeners, know about all of the amazing free support programs and services that we offer at survivingbreastcancer.org. If you are not already aware, hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events, and there you will see a plethora of programs that I would really encourage you to join. For example, we have our Thursday Night Thrivers support group for all stages and subtypes of breast cancer. We have art therapy classes, expressive writing classes, yoga, Pilates, and most recently, we've launched all of our programs now also offered in Spanish. So yes, hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events and you'll get the download there. You can also follow us on Instagram at survivingbreastcancer.org, all one word. And if you're personally interested in my life with William, you can follow us on Instagram at Laura and Will, where we post what it's like to run a nonprofit, work crazy jobs, have a crazy life, hang out with our pup Logan. I post pictures behind the scenes of running the podcast. We love to eat good food and travel. So if you're interested, that's Laura and Will on Instagram. But enough about me and our organization. Let's turn things over to Dr. Sophia Edwards-Bennett. Welcome to the conversation. So welcome everyone to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. I am so excited for today's episode because we are here with an expert and author in the radiation oncology space, Dr. Edwards-Bennett, who is joining us today for a deep dive in all things oncology, dealing with breast cancer in general, and also how she's living and managing such a busy life as a radiation oncologist, and then finds time for her passion of writing and exploring and providing hope and resilience to those of us who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. So, Dr. Edwards-Bennett, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I am extremely blessed and certainly honored.
Where are you joining us today from?
I'm literally all over the country at this point, and
Okay.
Sometimes my schedule is so unpredictable, I don't know where I'll be. But I'm one of the opportunities that I've been granted is to assist in launching cancer centers. After launching the cancer center in my birth country, Jamaica, training here, but given the opportunity to do so, then subsequently I have been blessed with the opportunity to launch other cancer centers. So I'm in the Midwest right now, just assisting
Incredible.
with that venture. Yes.
Yeah, incredible work to be able to travel around the country and then help communities that really have the need for these types of resources as well. Well, would you like to give us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the field of radiation oncology?
I think the theme of my life has always been, whether or not I realized it, at the time, because I think we live life prospectively, but we analyze and understand life retrospectively, right? And so I realized that I was corralled into the field, guided into this path of medicine and thereafter, specifically oncology, because of life events. So my mom passed away when I was 13 years old. She battled lupus for 5 to 7 years before that, so before her ultimate passing. And so you can imagine that she was in and out of the hospital. And at the time, I mean, I'm originally from Jamaica. So at the time, there was no actual effective treatment for lupus, right? This is years ago. There was no treatment for lupus in the US, let alone a third world country, right? And so the panacea, of course, at that time was just, steroids. And so, but obviously it was not effective. And so she passed. But during that time, I was exposed to multiple physicians, just and because we were really frequent flyers, so to speak, at different hospitals. I mean, she was transferred from one hospital to the next. But I do recall specific physicians, and one in particular who was extremely influential in terms of how I thought about doctors and their role. He consistently checked in, not just on my mom, of course, but I remember conversations I had with him about how I was coping with my mom being ill, which he did not have to do. He paid close attention to my brothers and I specifically, and with me, because I was the youngest, he geared our conversations and discussions toward it was more age appropriate and dug deep. And I think that really left an indelible mark in my in my mind, in my gray matter of my brain, as to how a patient should be treated. Of course, at that time, I wasn't aware of where I would be now, but my mom had this clear vision of the path of all three kids before she passed. She conveyed that to us. And at the time, of course, I thought this was absolutely just really incredible, meaning unbelievable, right? Oh, to the point of being impossible, because you have to understand that our mom was our core. She was the one who we depended on for everything. And so her passing did not seem to be leading to anything but despair, right? So how could she now have this vision of our lives being anything but that? But instead, it was the complete opposite. And this was a vision that was given to her by God Himself. But we could not, at the time, because of where we were, who we were, the circumstance that we were standing in, thus circumstance, right? We could not really grasp and capture the full meaning of that vision, but we walked in it and eventually, obviously, realized that it was indeed aligned with what she was shown by the Almighty. And so thereafter, many things occurred, Laura, many things occurred, but it was still guiding me on that path, so much so that even being chosen after undergrad to enroll, selected to apply to the PhD program at Georgia State, was all in his master plan, right? And thereafter, and believe it or not, the project that I was drawn to, because in a PhD program, you are given a milieu of like a cornucopia of projects to choose from, right? And then you determine the project that mostly aligns with your interest. And I was presented with multiple projects, and my spirit connected to this project that was being governed by Dr. Dabney Dixon. And this project was about synthesizing anthraquinones, which are DNA intercalating agents. So anthracyclines in general are used to treat cancer. And this project was specifically about designing, so synthesizing, because this is bioorganic chemistry. So synthesizing DNA intercalating agents, so and to manipulate these structures such that the DNA on rates would be fast and the off rates would be slow, so that the DNA on and off rates would therefore dictate the activity of these drugs. And it was then that I delved into the medical aspect, because in synthesizing these agents, of course, there are many, and in any research program, you need to immerse yourself in the research studies, so the publications, and believe it or not, that reignited my interest in medicine, which I was exposed to as a child. And so, this is it seems like a story, but this is, you can't make this up. This is certainly a guided path. I mean, it is divine for sure. And that is how I then decided to, study, of course, for the MCAT, etc. And I was admitted to Cornell. Several medical schools, but I chose Cornell specifically because at that time I knew by then that I wanted to pursue oncology. So knowing that, and knowing the proximity and the intimate collaboration between Cornell and MSKCC, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, I selected Cornell for that reason. And my first year of Cornell, I shadowed Dr. Carol Portlock, and she's a medical oncologist at Memorial Sloan Kettering. So at the time, because I synthesized anti-cancer agents, in my mind, I thought that I was on the path to becoming a medical oncologist, not knowing that in the summer after I enrolled at Cornell, so after completing my first year of medical school, not knowing that I would be introduced to Aki Yahalam, who is a nestor in the field of radiation oncology, specifically lymphoma. And he introduced me to radiation oncology, and I fell in love with radiation oncology, and the rest is history after that. So yes, so again, divinely ordained.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that deep and beautiful story. And you touch upon so many points, I think, as we're navigating this thing called life, the retro retrospective approach of, I would never have guessed that I would have, one, been diagnosed with breast cancer, let alone hosting a national podcast to reach so many people and inspire so many people. However, to your point, these things are looking to happen for a reason, and we have a gift to share with the world in whatever modality that is. And so I think I really appreciate you sharing that context with us and our listeners. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the fact that, because it's one. So when we are faced with adversities, right? I think that many times there is a component of us actually hearing and listening to the lesson that we are supposed to glean, right? But we have to be open to that, right? So going through the process is extremely important. As I tell my patients, it's not just about trying to move on, right? Everyone always gives us this mandate that you need to move on, move on from wherever you are to the next, on to the next. But until you have gleaned and captured every lesson from the process, I don't think you should move on, because you see, it is in that processing that right? You were inspired to use your experience to help others, right? If you had moved on without that, you may never have developed this podcast and immersed yourself into it in such a way that you're helping thousands and thousands of patients currently experiencing and going through this treatment, and then beyond, survivors, right?
Absolutely.
And also inspiring them to do the same. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Like what I'm hearing you say too, and it sounds very similar and rooted in your experience with your mom and the medical teams that were caring for her, is that you're treating the whole person, not just the disease at that time. And then allowing people to take that pause and breath of fresh air, because I think society wants us to move on. They want us to, like, oh, your hair's back, you must be better now. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm dealing with a lot of trauma still, right? Or are you back to work? Your medical FMLA is over. You're moving on. And so, tell me more about how you work with your patients. I'm very curious, because this is so important for people to hear and resonate with, that it is okay to take a deep breath. And especially in cancer, where you're kind of going from appointment to appointment, week to week, chemo to radiation therapy every single day, it doesn't necessarily hit you until it stops. And then you're like, wow, I just went through this crazy, horrific journey, and now I can process.
You said something so profound. That's exactly what I convey to my patients, and that's exactly what I convey in my book. But literally every single patient I see, the same message is relayed. As you just stated. So patients, imagine, I know you don't need to imagine this, but for those who have never been diagnosed with cancer, just imagine that you're going on with your daily existence, which is what occurs for all our cancer patients. You're going on, you're making 5-10 year plans. We all do. We are all aware of our mortality, but we're not faced with it every day, right? And so we make plans as we should, right? This is what I'm going to be doing today. And I have my vacation plan for 6 months from now, right? And we're all making these plans. And then one day something happens. Either we feel a lump, or we develop a symptom, a cough that is not uh, treated by just antibiotics. Instead, it worsens, or a PSA is detected, and fast forward, you're being told by your physician that you have cancer, right? And then your entire life changes. It's at the forefront of your mind every single day, but you have no time to process, because as soon as you're diagnosed, you're told, okay, uh, you need to go to this appointment, then the next, then the next, then the next. Oh, and this is what you need. You need chemotherapy. You need radiation. This is after surgery, right? And you need all these treatments. And for radiation therapy, it's not just once per week. It's literally every day, Monday through Friday. For multiple weeks, depending on the era, and it whether or not you were offered an abbreviated course, if it was available at the time. Now we do have multiple abbreviated courses, but that time was conventional. So it's either 5 to 6.5 weeks, right? And you're going through that every day. And literally, all you can do is manage your life the best you can while you're being treated, because life doesn't stop, right? All those other responsibilities are still occurring. If you're a parent, then you still have kids, that you need to be a mother to the kids, right? You have a job. Multiple people still have a job, and they have life burdens. They're carrying that, but they're also dealing with facing their mortality, right? And that's it is overwhelming. And this is why it is so important for our patients to know, for every patient to know how strong they are, the resilience and the tenacity that they don't see in themselves. So from my perspective, through my lens, I can see what they're going through, but they're going through it so they can't see. They don't have that perspective, right? They're really just literally, it's a tunnel vision, because I'm going through this and I have all these responsibilities. How could they possibly process what they're going through? It's too overwhelming. So I convey to my patients literally every day, but mostly at the end of treatment. The message that I always want to leave with them is, now I want you to sit with yourself and process what you've been through. But the foundation that I want to lay before that is how strong they are, because we don't see ourselves, right? That's why we need a mirror, right? We don't see ourselves. So, but someone needs to make sure that they understand who they are, right? Because they don't realize that they have just they've just overcome this great feat that many don't even cannot even fathom, right? They can't fathom. I had a patient who was undergoing treatment under my care. And it's really interesting because, she expressed to me that she felt that she was failing everything. She was failing as a mom. She was not being good at her job. And she doesn't seem to be able to excel at anything. She thought she was failing at everything, right? And I asked her, I said, hmm, why do you feel this way? And she said, because everything is just overwhelming, and I used to be good at this, and I used to be there for my kids, but it appears that there is not enough time to do it all, and I'm failing at everything. And I said to her, I said, okay, well, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I'm painting a picture. I said, so I want you to imagine a woman, a friend who has 3 children, because I think she had 3 children at the time, 3 children. And she has a full-time job, and she has cancer, and she's not only undergoing chemotherapy and radiation, but she's dealing with the side effects, right? And she's still expected to be this mom to all 3 kids the same way she was prior to the diagnosis. She's still expected to be great at her job. And she's doing all of this, and she's supporting her entire family. And she's dealing with toxicity. And many nights she can't sleep, many nights, and she still has to wake up and go to work every day and still perform, still function. And she does it every day. She wakes up every morning knowing what she has to face, and she does this every day. Tell me, what would this patient? What would you say to this woman? Would you think? What do you think about this woman? Would you think that this woman is remarkable? Would you think that this woman is amazing? Would you think that this woman is strong? And before she could even think about it, she said, yes, I would think that she's amazing. How could she do all that? I said, that woman is you. That's you. That woman is you.
So true. I mean, sometimes it takes that validation and that external perspective to really see us and everything that we're going through. And something else that you mentioned earlier too is, after you're going through all of these things, to like take a moment to sit with it. And how difficult is that for us in a society that's go, go, go and try and like hustle and do like the extra and go the extra mile and achieve, to like pause and deal with the uncomfort of loss, surgery, body changes, image, chemo brain that might affect your job. All of these things that you're referencing, right, is very challenging. And we don't give ourselves time to breathe because, cancer happened to us. We put it in a little box and put it up on the shelf and we don't talk about it. But I think the reality is that, yes, it happened. And now that's just part of my story. And I can choose how I want to interact with that story, who I want to share it with, who I don't want to share it with, and the aspects that I want to bring forward.
Exactly. And never, I always encourage my patients that there's certain people in your life, especially when you're going through treatment, that you do need to distance yourself from. And I don't mean forever. I just mean for that time, because there's certain people who are supposed to take the journey with you. But if there is anyone who either tries to accelerate your process, they're not going through it, right? But they can't have a say that is going to discourage you or make you feel that you're not doing what you're supposed to do, because you're experiencing it. You are the one. And so you get to determine at what pace, you get to determine how you feel. No one else has that right. No one else. So anyone who is so uncomfortable, right? Because when someone says to you, Laura, that, oh, so you must be okay now because your hair is growing back. This is even after your treatment has been completed. Their intention is not bad. It's just that the human nature, right? It's human nature to want you to feel better, but in really what it means is it's uncomfortable for them. And so, because it's uncomfortable for them, they need to feel comfortable. And the way they feel comfortable is to say that you must be okay. Be, right? You must be okay. And so, therefore, I feel better because you're okay. Because if you're not, then it makes me uncomfortable, right? But it is not the patient's job to make someone else comfortable about their process. It is the patient. The patient needs to think about their journey because it is their odyssey. It's not someone else's. It is their life. And so processing seeing with yourself when the treatment is all over, when you don't have to go on this path, you don't have to go to treatment every day and face everyone else. Sitting with yourself, I tell them, just in a closet somewhere private, even away from your family, and just think about what you've been through. Think about it, and think about it in a way where the message that you need to gain from it is a conversation you're having with yourself and the divine. And believe it or not, he gives you this deposit that you need in your mind, because the spirit speaks to the soul, right? Because our soul is our mind, emotion, and will, right? But the spirit speaks to the soul, right? And the soul then captures that message, right? But if we're not quiet, if we're not silent in those moments where we're not hearing others' voices of where we should be, how we should act or react, then we cannot capture that. Right. And so it's extremely important for everyone, because the journey doesn't end when treatment ends. The journey doesn't end there. Actually, that is when really your inner journey begins. That inner journey that you weren't allowed to really sink into because you were just so busy just dealing with the diagnosis and the treatment.
Just trying to
So
live
it's
that day
extremely
to
important.
day. Exactly. And I think that's a beautiful segue to the book that you wrote, The Path to Soul Immunity. And I think a lot of the
Mm.
themes that we're talking about today emerge in your writing. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about when you decided to write this book. I know you are a well-published author and
Mm.
scholar, but what motivated you and what called you to write this next book of yours?
That's a very interesting question, because I did not plan to write this book. So one thing led to another. I was given the opportunity to write a chapter in Jack Canfield's book Success. And Laura, I kid you not, the truth is that when I was given this opportunity, I had already written the chapter for this book and I didn't know it. Yeah. So that is when I formulated the 7-pronged approach that I use in my clinic, called His Lamp, right? To to help patients to deal with the diagnosis, but then beyond, not just treating the body, but the psychological tumor that I refer to. That's the silent tumor, the invisible tumor we cannot see. We can see the gross tumor, and that's what everyone concentrates on, right? Treating the tumor. But the psychological tumor is also growing, right? And that needs to be treated as well. And that process, as I stated, it doesn't end right at the end of the treatment for the cancer. And so the psychological tumor is what this His Lamp is geared toward. So His lamp is, as in thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And when he downloaded this message in my spirit, the thing is that I did not know the acronym was His Lamp. He downloaded these 7 elements of what I refer to as the big C attitudes. And then one day I was just sitting and the letters rearranged themselves. And and I saw his lamp. And the H is for restoration of hope. The I is for reaffirmation of identity. And S is for reclamation of self-worth. And I know you mentioned identity before in our conversation. And then the L is for the reappraisal of life. The A is requited admiration. And I alluded to that when we were discussing, my admiration for my patients' tenacity, the courage it takes, because they're always so effusive about, what they admire about me and how I treat them. But I always want to convey how much I admire them as well. And then the M is rehabilitation of the mind. So the mind needs to be rehabilitated to know who you are after this process is complete, and that your identity is not the cancer. Your identity goes way beyond that. And the P, which is the purpose, is the reignition of purpose, which is exactly what happened to you, right? And so many others, right? I don't know if you know Claire Babineau. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, right? And she was a mogul at Walmart before she was diagnosed. And this was, her goal was to go higher and higher and achieve more and more. But when she was diagnosed, she then revisited her childhood goal and dream, which was to become a philanthropist. And now she is the CEO of Feed America and has been ever since, right? So that's reignition of purpose. And so many times, what patients, what we all don't realize is that all of these elements need to be what I call the big C attitudes, his lamp, needs to be infused in the treatment of cancer. And that is one of the things that I am really passionate about disseminating, so that others, physicians and their family members, because my patients' family members are also in tune and informed about his lamp, because the more they can be a part of practicing those elements uh, with our patients, the better it is. So his lamp was formulated. I wrote about his lamp before this opportunity was afforded to me. So that is what. So that chapter in Jack Canfield's book is simply about his lamp, because the book is about success. But for me, I defined success as what you are who you are created to be, and what you're passionate about, and the fact that that is your path to success, not what you think will afford, wealth, but passion, right? Brings fulfillment, right? That's your purpose on this earth, because we're all born with a purpose. We are born with it inside of us, really. It just requires activation, right? And so, as I said, Claire's was activated by just that, right? Your purpose was activated by what you've been through. So it needs to be activated somehow. And so that was the path that actually was the inception of then the opportunities that subsequently occurred, which allowed me the opportunity to write this book, The Path to Soul Immunity, Soul Currency for Life, and the Big C with Dr. E.B. But the way that this book was written was that I was woken up between 2:30 and 3 a.m. every morning. I laugh because it's just unbelievable. Uh, and I always say I don't take credit for writing this book. I penned it. I needed to type it, but literally I woke up with thoughts deposited, and I wrote these thoughts down, not in the sequence it was written in the book, right? I wrote all these thoughts down, and in my notes, and then I would either return to sleep, or I would ruminate over the thoughts that were deposited, and that is how the book was written. But the reason that I obeyed, and the reason that I was given the grace to write this book, was because of a growing demand of my soul. So when I write in the book, especially if in the prose "Why Me," I introduce that prose "Why Me," the siren call, the question of everyone who goes through any adversity: why me, right? There's a long prose about that. And I wrote that before. So the preface to that prose, in the preface to that prose, I explain that there was a soul demand. There was something inside me that was so strong, that desire to expel everything, to excavate deeply the thoughts that I had been amassing about what my patients are going through and how best to address that. There was a call to treat not just the 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 body, the tumor, but go beyond that. And his lamp, for some reason, was not enough. And so I always refer to that as the soul demand, not my soul demand, but there was a soul demand placed on my soul to fulfill the demand of the soul of others, right? So it's my soul answering the call of my patients and their families, and also other physicians' demand, their soul demand. So when Jeremiah speaks of, it's like a fire shot up within my bone, right? That's how it felt. I had to do this. And what I wrote, it was from somewhere that is beyond me, right? And the goal of it was to touch every single every single need that one could possibly have while you're going through any adversity, not just cancer. The second half of my book focuses on cancer, but and the first half is about my story. And I did that because I wanted to be sure that everyone understood that my adversities, the things I went through, that's what led me to become who I have become, in order now to share that lesson with the world and to my cancer patients. And so the love letters I've written to my cancer patients, that is because I that is because of the need that I sense within them, the experience of treating my patients every single day and capturing from that experience the needs. And every patient is so different. So capturing that and then tapping into that and then allowing that to sink in, and then to produce this book that addresses what I think was their demand. I believe that there are many people in this world, like you, many people, Laura, who are called to address this need. It's not just, so my book addresses certain needs, but we are an army, right? And we're being called from different sectors of life to do exactly what God wants us to do because he sees the need in them, right? And we're all addressing it in the way that he requires us to. And it collates into this in this manner where you were led somehow to request my presence, and to request me on this podcast, and that's how it works, right? That's how it works. So the people you touch, Laura, the people you touch, they touch others, and the people they touch the lives of others, and you may never meet some of those people, right? But it is a network that is so profound and so extensive, right? That we reach beyond the people we know. And that is an amazing purpose in life. And when you can fulfill that purpose, when you can complete your assignments, because your assignments are under the umbrella of your purpose, right? So you have several assignments. And so you go from one to the next, but they're all connected under this umbrella of your life's purpose, right? So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, yes. So much to unpack. I actually want to ask, in your book, you talk about soul currency. Can you explain a little bit more what that concept entails?
So currency can be exchanged, right? If you think about just when you think about currency, most people think about money as a currency, right? Right? But I'm talking, when I speak of currency, I speak of the intangibles, right? So faith, hope, right? These are things that are intangible, but you can transfer those to others, right? Or you can exchange. For example, encouragement, right? Encouragement is a currency. So you encourage someone so they can encourage someone else. So it's a currency, it's a flow, because currencies flow, right? So it flows and it never stops giving, right? So encouragement, right, renders or instills courage, right? So I encourage, but I give you the soul currency of courage. Do you see my point? So it's that is why it's a currency, because it keeps flowing, and courage can then yield courage and another currency, right? Because courage breeds hope, right? And then, as the scripture says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? So then you gain, because faith is the substance, right? Right? So you hope, but then the substance of your hope is faith. So there are many currencies that I refer to. I refer to even unforgiveness as a currency, because forgiveness as a currency, and fallibility as a currency. Because the thing is, when you go through this process, and I've counted so many patients who have been through this process where, or life in general, and there are many times when there are instances where they've been hurt, right, by the way someone has responded to their illness, or they weren't there for them, etc. But forgiveness is important, not just for the person, but specifically for the person who needs to forgive. Because what that does is it allows you to relinquish bitterness. It allows you to relinquish that pain that you felt. And in doing so, your mind is now open, your conscience is clear to grasp and to glean what indeed you should from the experience you've had. But if your mind is just so embedded in just unforgiveness and bitterness, then your conscience can't be clear to deal with all this, which is why, again, it is not healthy for my patients. I always say it's not healthy for them to be around anyone who is not supportive enough or is not going to be aligned with what they're going through, because that sets you up for unforgiveness, right? It does, because and it's hard for someone to. I was speaking to a patient, one of my patients. I mentioned to her that she's always she felt the need to say, this is very recent, she felt the need to always say she's okay because she doesn't want to burden anyone. But in the midst of her always saying she's okay, she is feeling the burden and no one is unloading her burden. In she's so beautiful, so kind, and so unselfish that she wants so much to help others be comfortable around her and unburden them, but in the process she's being burdened. But that is not the goal. It is for her to feel that she can indeed depend on someone else, and it is not, certainly not, her duty to relieve someone else's burden, not when she's the one who's burdened. It's not her job to do that at all. Yeah, so sometimes just having, and I think it's important as the physician, right, to be the one to to counsel a patient about such a topic, because as I see in the book, patients don't not, I encourage therapy, I encourage psychology, psychiatric evaluations, but my patients really don't have time for that. But because they see me, they respect me as their physician and they trust me, then that message coming from me, it holds a lot of weight and it sinks in because it's coming from someone who they trust, which is why it's so important, again, to be able to allow your patients to ensure that they know that you are not just there to treat the cancer. It's very important because there's so many things that they will open up and disclose to you that they wouldn't have had they not felt this embrace, right? This embrace, and not just physical, but they know that you are for them, that they can entrust you with anything they're going through, and you are there to walk with them through it, right? It's very important, which is why this is not medicine. I don't see medicine as medicine. Medicine is a ministry in and of itself. It doesn't stand alone. It's a ministry. It's a ministry. And ministry in Latin, right? The word for ministry in Latin means servant. That's what it means. It means servant. you know so I'm there to serve. We're there to serve, right, in every capacity, because if you entrust me with your life, it's not a coincidence. I don't believe it's a coincidence, right? So the disguise, the divine, and the dispatch who helped me through life, they afforded me the opportunity to be the divine, disguised and dispatched for any patient who walks through my door.
It's so
Right.
powerful,
And
so amazing. And I already can feel the goosebumps of not just myself, but our listeners who, are holding your voice and your thoughts and your vision so closely. I would love to ask if
thank
you
you.
could gift us an opportunity to hear from you as the author and creator of this book. I would love to hear a little bit of your writing if you'd be so generous.
So I write in prose format, as I'm sure you know, and I do that because I think it's easier to digest. So I would love to read The Ministry of Medicine. In the profession of medicine, there are certain unspoken rules. I speak not singularly of the formal profession, but the actual act of the practice and execution thereof, what it supports, what it comports, what it maintains, and to what it pertains. Herein is the plain and simple truth. The profession of medicine is not pristine, not by any means, but it requires an unselfish posture, an ever abiding connection of human beings. It is a professional field that encapsulates the very essence of mortality. All our idiosyncrasies germane to our tendencies, or spectrum of attributes that fuel our capacities, the genius of intellectuality, the breadth of creativity, the tenacity of our intentionality, the elasticity of our malleability or neuroplasticity, so that the conventional milestone is perpetually transposed with progress and tradition lingers less. So, when we meet our patients, we're not just introduced to their cancer, diagnosis, or disease, but to their tapestry of perspectives, their present, colored by their past, the future, dictated by the unanswered question, where do we go from here? And it is within that framework of inclusivity, compassion, and sensitivity that we must strive to apply our practice of medicine as a ministry. Firstly, let's debunk the concept that exceptionalism or notoriety in medicine precludes the act or display of empathy, whether putative, arguable, or revered. In like manner, the practice of medicine should not exclude or require the percolation of one's cultural identity, but instead embrace diversity. And in the case of spirituality, our soul hosts or believes in a higher being, not fleeting, not grounded, but held in high esteem. And since we're all human beings, there are more similarities than may be apparent phenotypically. So, if the feet were placed in another's shoes, a scenario that could very likely be true, what would you do? What graciousness would you desire to be granted to you? So let's connect beyond the profession and post nominals, or script, statistics, or masked self control. Sanitization of this priceless gift of human interaction is not the goal. This is not the goal. Instead, it is a blessed opportunity to elucidate beyond the cancer of the patients we face, the treasure things in life they embrace. Because in the clinic room is where we commune. It's where we shed the garment of culture. It's where we declutter from impertinent acts of human nature and instead focus solely on the solemnness of life, the essence of our existence. This interaction is transcendent beyond any preconceived beliefs or notions. Indeed, it summons unparalleled devotion, face to face in that space. We are desensitized from hues, creeds, or race. We form a bond that is one of the purest of mankind. And in those moments in time, there, in our microcosm or silo, in that sacred space, and in those moments, our thoughts are intertwined. As the preservation of life preoccupies our minds, where hope, strength, and courage are synchronized. It is this patent, transparent operation and heart distillation that will breach our patient's walls of doubts and fears to establish that bond of human connection. It is in that space, that state, that unabashed, endearing place where we not only lend healing, but indeed healing we too receive. That is the ministry of medicine. At least that's what I believe. That's it.
Wow. Speechless. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our listeners and our community. Such an honor to hear your work read by you and your voice and the power. Thank you. That's such a nice gift.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And this is a powerful platform that you've created as well, Laura. And I am so happy that you answered the call to do this. Likewise. I really am.
Likewise.
I really am.
I feel like this is just the beginning, as you mentioned, right? Our paths now are forever intersected. And I hope that we're able to support each other, on this path of serving, those diagnosed with cancer. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on Breast Cancer Conversations today. And I will link to your book as part of the show notes so people can find the book if they're interested in it. And I hope we can stay in touch. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Laura. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast are from personal experiences and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you're looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Until next time, keep on thriving.